the zone with the Zigzag Man, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity. Big business, government, and organized religion. I am back, and you are flying high over the zone with me, the Zigzag Man, from Alameda, California, the 420 studio, down by the lagoon, and we are talking politics today. My guest is a long-time contributor to the show, Brother Scott. Welcome back to the mic, brother.
Thanks for that welcome.
All right, you've been an additive. We're going on our fourth year, maybe our fifth year already, I don't know, 2012, and it is 16, so we're in our fourth year of doing this, and we made some changes around the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. This show is now entitled Flying High Over the Zone with me, the Zigzag Man. With the Zigzag Man, not with me, the Zigzag Man. And we have several baseball shows. We've added Durfcast to the network and Bob's Radio Cafeteria, two great podcasters who have joined the network. And I get to retain the voice of Tycho, which has been very cathartic for me these 4 years. And I get to say what's on my mind, and I get to say it with nobody editing me. And the best way to say it is with some knowledge. And I've found over these last 4 years, if I'm looking for the answers to stuff, I go to Brother Scott. My question is, what's a caucus? And what's a caucus in the Republican sense? What's a caucus in the Democratic sense? So that's my first question for you today, Scott. You're an expert.
I'm not an expert.
You are an expert.
I read one article.
You will be an expert. You read more than one. You wrote one article, you mean, today. Here we go, Scott. Brother Scott.
I can only tell you what I read if I can remember it as I read it.
Try to remember.
So take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
What I heard was that in Iowa, which the whole state only has 3 or 4 million people, I believe, they have a caucus system in the Democratic and Republican Party primary elections, where each party decides who the candidate for president will be for that party. They don't have their primaries in the same way. I'm told that the Republicans go about conducting a primary caucus in Iowa in a certain way. Let's call it the Republican way. And the Democrats in Iowa go about choosing who's going to represent them as delegates in a different way. And it boils down to, it seemed to me, essentially this. The Republicans hold a secret ballot. You attended Republican Party primary caucus in Iowa. You hear some presentations on behalf of this candidate or the other candidate, and then their vote is taken, and presumably they put their ballots in a ballot box, and then the ballots get counted, and then the winners or the recipients of the votes are announced, and who got the most votes and at what percent. And it happens in that fashion. By contrast, in the Democratic Party side of things, I believe, they show up, the caucus candidates are self-selected. They go from small regions to large and in between, and they show up in groups of 10, 12, or as many as 1,000 in Des Moines, and they gather together, and then by a show of hands and a counting of heads, they divide themselves according to who they support as a candidate for the Democratic Party nomination to be the next president. So they'll say, for instance, who's for the governor of Maryland, and a certain percentage will raise their hands, and they're directed over to a corner of the auditorium, wherever the meeting is, and then they'll ask who's for Bernie Sanders, and those people will gather on the opposite side, and then they'll ask who's for Hillary Clinton, and those people will gather in the middle, figuratively speaking, and maybe even literally speaking. So it's not a secret ballot. It's open and notorious, and it's you're voting with your feet. And if you don't achieve at least a 15%, I think that's the cutoff figure. If you don't achieve at least a 15% of the vote in these caucuses, then you're eliminated in the next round of the voting. But your delegates are not yet assigned. What would they do? They don't have to sit it out. They can be horse traded to either one of the other candidates, and in return, maybe something could be put on the table and bargained for. An appointment as UN diplomat or Secretary of State or what have you. I don't know. But a lot of horse trading goes on. And it's the freewheeling ward politics that we used to read about way back when. I think that's the way it goes, and that's going to be the way it goes tonight, if I'm right.
What significance do you place on these caucuses? Nebraska's coming up, this one?
I don't know. I've heard it said, I think I read it in the paper, that Iowa is not always right. Whoever wins in Iowa doesn't always win, but they very often do.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean? Chance of rain. I'm right whether it rains or not. I don't know what it means, but everyone seems to think it means a lot.
Okay. We had an interesting discussion off mic about Ted Cruz and his libertarian views. Can you talk to that about the oil subsidy and the corn and what have you? Just kind of, you really put things into perspective for me, and I'd like you to do that for the audience.
It's, again, what I heard on the radio within the last day or so, and it was probably on NPR. And what I was hearing them say was that something like this. Contrary to what you might preconceive the candidates' positions to be, there's one candidate among all candidates for president in both parties. There's one that's known to be opposed to government subsidies. I don't know in what form, whether price supports or what have you, but he's against government subsidies to agribusiness in Iowa, an agribusiness state. And he's saying, I would cease any form of government subsidy to the big agricultural outfits. And if they can't make it on their own, then they sink or swim on their own. Now that sounds pretty logical. That sounds actually pretty pure from a archetypical capitalist point of view, free enterprise point of view. But only one candidate that I'm aware of holds that view in public, and it's not Bernie Sanders.
Right, which is somewhat surprising.
It's Ted Cruz.
Yep.
So that to me indicates he's probably more of a true ideologue, a true believer in his own particular worldview, laissez-faire, Ayn Rand, fountainhead type of capitalism. Mm-hmm. That's his worldview. I'm not saying that's the way the world turns. I'm saying that's his worldview, and he believes it truly, and he'll stick up and say that in the face of big agribusiness in the first state that's holding a primary that everyone seems to think is so important to how the president gets decided. He's doing it, if the reports are accurate. And I find that interesting and somewhat ironic.
I also find it interesting he's dropped a few points in the poll in the next day or so after having come out with that.
Yeah, I don't know. But you would expect it.
Yeah.
You know, because anyone in Iowa, you would think, not anyone, but many people in Iowa would think, oh my God, they're going to close the fertilizer plant now. There goes my paycheck.
Right.
And that would cost him votes.
What kind of take do you have on Donald Trump? It's this late in the race, and he's still a major, major factor. And do you think anyone is going to come out of the shadows? Maybe Romney again? Anyone else to say, hey, we've got to pick this party up a little bit. We're starting to be known as a bunch of clowns. And I don't say Cruz is a clown for without good reason. I mean, he came out the other day with this Christ thing, Christ above America, and his father is absolutely bingo nuts. So we don't want either of those two guys. But yet again, 49 to 51% of America thinks that either or both of those guys are okay. Does that scare you a little bit?
Well, it makes me ask, whose fault is that? And you and I have had this discussion before. I blame
about the Democrats, right?
The Democratic Party
not coming through, right?
Well, I don't even know if I want them to come through, because some of the things they promised to come through on are not going to do me any good. They're not going to do you any good either. So it's not about coming through. The Democrats are ineffective for ordinary people like you and I to try to fight Wall Street, to try to fight what you perceive as Republican Party politics.
Right, well, Bernie isn't falling prey to that. Bernie takes no money from anyone but the people. I think he's taken $850 from somebody, which was
I know a guy who's got those principles. He's living in a cardboard house under the 580 freeway asking for change at the red light. He doesn't take money from millionaires either, because he hasn't had the opportunity.
But I don't think he ever asked for the opportunity, do you, Scott? When he came into this thing, he was trying to change things, change the political way of things.
That's why it will hurt so much more when he finally takes that money. How are you going to win the presidency without taking that money?
Well, I don't know. He's like either 3 points up or 3 points down to basically the incumbent.
Right.
At this point in the race, maybe he can change things and not take the money.
When pigs fly.
All right. Will you admit something, Scott, that about a year ago when I got on the Bernie bandwagon, you were unbelievably skeptical, and if I would have told you then, a year later, he was in this position, you would have laughed at me. Am I right?
No, Bernie is that little runt of a guy, the second or third string halfback who broke through the line and found daylight, and it surprised the shit out of nobody more than Bernie Sanders.
No, he's not a runt of a guy. He has stood up for his principles. He has not gone to war. He has been a great senator for many years, and I don't think he's surprised. I think, like me, he saw the tide turning, and I equate it to the Alameda mayoral candidacy of Trish Spencer, who took the grassroots way rather than the money from the big unions in Alameda, the police union, the fire unions, all these, the realtor. She didn't take any of that geld. And she won. And I think there's a precedent to be set. Am I right?
Most likely. I don't know, but most likely. But let's say this. Trish hasn't been seen since she won an election by some of her friends. God love her. But I'm wondering if she's not meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and the city bankers right now. I mean, you know, she's bought into the game, and she's gone farther than most people would have expected, farther than I would have expected. Bernie has gone farther than I expected.
Okay, that's my point.
But it ain't over till the fat lady sings, and the fat lady ain't even arrived yet.
Well, no, that's for sure. It ain't over. But my prediction, and we'll see how it goes till November, this caucus notwithstanding, between now and November, either the FBI will come out with disclosures or something will happen. She is so full of contradictions, of lies, deceitful crap, all these many years. She's untrustworthy, and I think that will come to the fold. That's my guess. I think we're in a new age of social media, Facebook leading the way, and her discrepancies, her lies, they put little films out. People are starting to see it, and the social media is a new form of campaigning that Obama benefited from a great deal in the second election, and I feel I'm on Facebook a lot. for my shows and socially. I feel the tone of the people. The people aren't going to take this crap any longer. We need change in the system, not just the person, the system. And that's what Bernie totes. He hasn't taken money from any big biz yet. And why do you think he will? After he's elected, is he going to take money?
I don't think he's going to get elected. And if he does get elected, he won't be able to get elected without taking the money. And if he can get elected...
Between now and Election Day?
I don't know what the timing is.
He's raising money without taking big money. Why do you say that?
And we've come all the way to Iowa. Look at him. Yeah, look at him go. He's on the 5, heading for the 6. He's got a long way to go. That's my point.
Well, you can't speed up the calendar because...
You can't. You're right. You can't. Right. And you seem to be wanting to do that. You can't. I'm the one that's trying to recognize that this is a calendar. We're only on the first page.
Oh, I don't think so. This is
the second page.
At least. And
I'll give you the third. You still got 9 more to go. So here's my point. A lot can happen between now and then. And I saw the movie Which Way Is Up with Richard Pryor. That explains the dynamic at work here in a very artful and comic way. It's worth seeing. Which Way Is Up, starring Richard Pryor. It is great.
Right.
And it tells of this kind of dynamic in an entirely different setting. It's on the shop floor and it involves a union. But the point is, you're going to be tempted in 9 ways to Sunday and some ways you didn't even anticipate. And it's an old story. And you'll make the Faustian bargain with the devil. And your career will succeed and you will seem glorious. And then you'll have a day of reckoning.
Well, Damn Yankees is like that in a way when you make a deal with the devil at the end.
There's a lot of those.
A lot of great movies.
On the same thing.
Okay.
And that's what I'm invoking right now.
He's 74 years old. He's come this far. Do you think he's going to suddenly make a deal with the devil?
Ronald Reagan was older than Bernie Sanders. And he was the devil himself.
Yeah, that he was. So say most at this point. Well, not even most. That which is the scary point.
Mm-hmm. Well, the scary point is that a B-grade actor set a precedent we have all come to regret. Because then you had a professional wrestler become the governor of Minnesota.
With many more brains than that.
You had half of Sonny and Cher become a congressional representative.
Now, that was scary.
There are many more examples.
Yes.
My point is, and then you had a guy who talked like a foreigner, an immigrant, become governor of California.
That's
and
right.
marry into the liberal dynasty.
Have you ever seen the possibility? Did you ever in your life think of the possibilities of a guy like Trump coming this far and a Republican, one of the 2 major parties in this race? Is it absurd? Are there things that are just surreal?
I've said Reagan started it, but here's what I wanted to say earlier when you mentioned Trump. I get this sensation, and I think it's shared by a lot of people, as Trump's candidacy has persisted and even grown. It's like going to the checkout at the grocery store and seeing the scandal rags there, the Rupert Murdoch press, the gutter press, with the wild claims and the lurid stories and the revealing photos and the coarse language. The stuff that, sullies a thinking brain is right up there on display as a grab item, an impulse item. It's as if when Trump ran for president, those kinds of newspapers found their way to the international racket Delaware, where you used to get the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and a host of foreign papers from around the world, and really educate yourself and enlighten yourself and add to your store of knowledge. Trump is those scandal rags taking over the newsstands, and now it's all we're reading because the media is delivering it to us in a steady diet.
And even those that read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times are getting that same scandalous bullshit. They're controlled by big business.
And that's a very good point. And Murdoch owns one of them. Who owns the Wall Street Journal now? Is that not a Rupert Murdoch press?
I think it is.
I believe it is, too.
Yeah. The Times, the New York Times, doing things that unheard of before.
And you don't have to be some kind of radical journalist for an alternative news weekly that exists by selling massage parlor ads. These are veteran journalists of the highest bourgeois order, paid pundits who feel displaced and felt like they were a cut above, like the Edgar Murrow or whatever his name was.
Right.
You know, people think of him as a paradigm of that. Those kind of guys, not anymore. Now the stuff you read is Ann Coulter and things of that order.
I hate that guy. Hey, Scott, it's been a pleasure, as usual, and thanks for setting us straight. I'm going to ask you one question before you go. What don't you like about Bernie?
I don't know Bernie personally. He seems like a likable guy. But just from studying history and being as old as I am, it's a tape that's played before, many, many times. You know, the old motto is you lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas. And he's been lying down with Democrats for so long, he's indistinguishable from them, except that he has a little S in the middle of his name that he doesn't talk about unless somebody prompts him to. And his definition of it is like diluted liquor. I want my liquor hard. I want my liquor to be real. I don't want my liquor with lemonade. Don't hide my liquor, try to serve me tea. Bernie Sanders is the tea. We need the hard stuff.
Well, who would you recommend for the hard stuff? Who would you vote for if there was an election? If all four of those people just ran, who would you vote for?
None of them.
All right.
I got no dog in that fight.
Okay, you don't think it's an advantage to we the people, you're included in we the people, if Bernie comes in on the people's money and isn't indebted to big business, doesn't care about the banks, doesn't even care about union money to get elected. He wants the money because the unions are tainted too. Let's face it, we both know that. We've talked about that.
What's the biggest taint the unions bear? Every house has its own problems. What's the biggest problem in the House of Labor?
I think it's the union leaders that lay down with management.
I think so too, at the bottom, and they lay down with the representatives of management in the political arena, and those are the Democrats, by and large.
So the Democrats haven't helped the union. They've hurt the union?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Point to a game. All the best games, the lasting games, the most monumental games, the most fundamental games that the labor movement has experienced, everything from the 8-hour day to Social Security to unemployment benefits, sick pay, the weekend, all of it. All of those fights, every single one, as far as I know. And I invite anyone to disprove me. I'd be happy to be educated. But that stuff comes from militant class action in the street and at the point of production. That's where that stuff happens. That's what really gets it in motion and makes it happen.
I think that's what Bernie's going to do and get out the people to do that in the grassroots effort.
I see nothing in his history that points in that direction.
Well, I see everything in this history that points in that direction because he came up the hard way. He's not a Rodham. He's not a Rockefeller. He's not a Bush. He's not any of these fuckers. He's just Bernie from Brooklyn with some brains, and he identifies. But
those aren't politics. You're not talking politically.
No, but you're going to get him elected in the age that we live in. It is politics. That's his politics. That's his way of doing it.
That's Bob Dylan's politics, and it was fake. He hopped the train and rode with Woody Guthrie and blah blah blah. Yeah. No, Bernie, regardless of where he grew up, he could have grown up in a coal mine. He is utterly working class as you can be.
And look at his net worth. Look at his net worth and his family situation and where his money went. But it's it's not politics in itself.
That's not program, I should say. That's a better way of saying it.
Okay.
That's not program.
Okay. But it makes for good. But it does make for electability.
Well, first you need program. Program is primary.
No, first you need electability.
No, that's the devil's bargain right now.
I think the program...
True Democrat.
I think the program is anti-establishment. And you gotta like that program because the way things are going, you're the first to admit that the Republicans are just like the Democrats year after year. And Hillary, a Democrat, she's as much a Republican as any of them. Would you agree to that?
Your premise is that it's anti-establishment and that therefore makes it good. I don't accept either premise, but let's assume for the sake of discussion that it is what you call anti-establishment. Adolf Hitler was anti-establishment. You can be anti-establishment in a lot of different directions.
I understand.
That's not program.
Then I'll rephrase it. It's anti-system as it is, political system as it is, people being elected and having indebtedness to the people that elect him.
Right.
He's not going to have those indebtedness. It's going to make it...
You're avoiding program. There's not one programmatic utterance coming out of you.
Well, of course there is, because what he's going to do is take the money, he's going to take the money from the multi-billionaires in the form of taxes, and he's going to use them for social programs. Now, that's as simple. I'm from Newtown High School. I was a super senior.
Right.
I graduated majoring in gym. And I didn't mean playing ball, just being a gym. So I'm not the smartest guy, but you can see that there needs to be a redistribution of the wealth, and that he's for that. If that's not a policy...
Where do you see that in his program? That he's for redistributing the wealth?
You do it automatically by taxing the piss out of these people.
That's what you do. Where does Bernie say he's doing that?
That he's going to tax... He says that in his policy.
You said redistribute wealth, now you're saying tax the wealthy.
Well, that's it goes. You could put a slash. Redistribute wealth by taxing the wealthy. Would that sound better to you?
Yes, President Obama. When's it going to get done, President Obama? It's nothing to differentiate him from any other Democrats that's FDR.
Other than it does. See, Obama is indebted to Monsanto in a big way. He signed off on it. All the civilized countries in the whole frickin' world won't take GMOs. Wait a minute, that's a program. What's he doing about the food? Obama's the biggest hypocrite I ever... He's a Republican. He's a millionaire. He's going to that point.
Well,
how does Bernie... So let's get... How does that fit in with Bernie?
All right, let Bernie tell you, because he's lauded Obama a lot. Now, maybe you might think it's just...
I think he's going to pick Hillary as the if he's got to pick anybody. That he hasn't picked Sanders means that he hasn't lauded him because he's...
He just had him at the White House.
Oh, well, what's he going to do? He's got to have both of them.
Well,
he can't.
Not lauding him.
That's not...
You ever been invited to the White House?
2 or 3 times. I couldn't go.
Okay, so he's lauded you more than he's lauded Bernie.
I know, but he invited me so they could arrest me. That's he'd get everybody together, and that was just a sham, and I knew it, so I wasn't going.
Getting back to the program, Bernie is what is people call a socialist.
Right, and what socialist? You have socialist idea. He's not a socialist. He has socialist ideas. There's a difference.
I'll end it on that. You win. He's not a socialist.
Is that bad? A socialist, a total socialist, doesn't make way for capitalism in any way. He's not saying eliminate capitalism. He's saying take the greed out of it, tax the billionaires. Those are social programs. He's not a socialist.
Then that's enough.
So you like him now?
No, I just like...
How could you... What do you not like about it? What?
I don't like a guy who calls himself a socialist when that's not really what he is.
He has to explain away being a socialist. He's gone on hundreds of these campaigns, meetings saying, listen, I'm not a socialist. He doesn't call himself a socialist. Trump... Big business calls him a socialist. I think he's the man.
Independent, and he's called himself a socialist. That's a matter of record. But he's a reluctant socialist, if I can
Because he has to be elected. He's not going to use words that are scared the shit out of Jed from North Carolina. Hey, he's a socialist. Where the hell is he? Fucking dick. Hey, kids, turn off the TV. You got to study for your SATs. And get off your sister. That ain't right. That's the kind of shit that you're dealing with. And it's right. You got a Jew boy from Brooklyn with a little culture, a little class. I mean, that's the white, right, that's the white elephant in the room, is that he's going to fix what the goyim fucked up. Hey, listen.
All right, I'll reconsider the vote.
All right, good. Vote twice, vote often, vote early. Do it the Chicago way. Thanks for having us. All that shit, Scott. Thanks, it was great, as usual. Brother Scott.
Thank you.
No last names. It's Brother Scott. I'm going to end the show the way I always do because I can. I'm going to implore everybody out there to keep your children out of military recruiting stations and off the laps of clerics. Keep your dreams wet, keep your humor dry, and keep on keeping on.